Hello friends, let us talk about the poem Thrushes by Ted Hughes today. Now, Thrushes is one of his frequently anthologized poems, and it's a short poem consisting of 3 stanzas. Each stanza has 8 lines and they are unrhymed stanzas. Just to put in a word about Ted Hughes, he is very popular and he occupies a very special position in English literature as the poet of animals, the animal poet you would call him, because most of his poems deal with animals, and he talks about the animal characteristics, and you have very famous poems like the Thought Fox, Hawk Roosting, the Jaguar, and many such. So he was always attracted to this world of animals. He admired the instinctive life that animals lived, and he always contrasted it with the life that human beings live, the stilted, the artificial, the sophisticated, the unnatural kind of life that human beings live. And so here too, in this poem too, he marks a kind of contrast between these 2 creatures, man and the thrush. Okay, let's look at the poem. Let me just read the poem quickly because it's very short. And I hope you know what thrushes are. Thrush is a bird. It's a very common bird which you find in English countrysides and I guess in the US and such places. And it is an insectivorous bird which feeds on insects and worms and such things. It is not exactly a very violent bird or a ferocious bird, but in this poem Ted Hughes chooses to picture it as a bird of intense violence and ferocity. So let's go to the poem. Thrushes by Ted Hughes. Terrifying are the attent sleek thrushes on the lawn, more coiled steel than living, a poised dark deadly eye, those delicate legs triggered to stirrings beyond sense, with a start, a bounce, a stab, overtake the instant and drag out some writhing thing. No indolent procrastinations and no yawning states, no sighs or head scratchings, nothing but bounce and stab and a ravening second. Second stanza. Is it their single mind-sized skulls, or a trained body, or genius, or a nest full of brats gives these days this bullet and automatic purpose? Mozart's brain had it, and the shark's mouth that hungers down the blood smell even to a leak of its own side and devouring of itself. Efficiency which strikes too streamlined for any doubt to pluck at it, or obstruction deflect. The last stanza. With a man it is otherwise. Heroisms on horsebacks, outstripping his desk diary at a broad desk, carving at a tiny ivory ornament for years, his act worships itself, while for him, though he bends to be blent in the prayer, how loud and above what fury spaces of fire do the distracting devils orgy and hosanna, under what wilderness of black silent waters weep. Okay, so that's the poem. In the first stanza, he is talking about these birds called thrushes. Maybe the narrator is sitting there watching these birds. The birds are outside on the lawn. They are pecking about on the lawn. And as he looks, as I mentioned earlier, these are not violent birds or ferocious birds. They are very commonly seen there, and pretty tame these birds are. But as he looks at them, as he looks at these birds seeking worms or insects with a single-minded attention, he suddenly feels that he is looking at a very, very ferocious or violent bird. And so this is what he says. Terrifying are the attent sleek thrushes on the lawn. So attend, here he means, attend means birds that are very kind of alert, birds that are keenly paying attention to something. So that is what he means by attend. Terrifying are the attent sleek thrushes on the lawn. Sleek because their feathers are soft and they are very shapely, and they have a metallic sheen because the bird's feathers, they always keep them preened, and so there is an oily sleekness to the bird. Terrifying are the attent sleek thrushes on the lawn, more coiled steel than living. So he feels that this bird, it doesn't look like it is a live bird to him. It seems to him that it is a metal bird made of coiled steel. A poised, dark, deadly eye, those delicate legs triggered to stirrings beyond sense. So he says that he can see the dark eye. You know how the bird's eye always looks like a bead, a dark bead, a shining bead. And so he says it's a dark, deadly eye because it is looking for a prey. It is looking for a worm or an insect to catch. That is why deadly. Those delicate legs. Now the legs of this bird itself, thrush is a small bird, and so the leg of the bird is very delicate, very thin. It is triggered. A poised, dark, deadly eye, those delicate legs, triggered to stirrings beyond sense. So this deadly eye of the bird, these delicate legs that move on the grass almost noiselessly, and so they are triggered by something, stirrings beyond sense. That is, we cannot understand what is it that propels the bird onward. They are obeying some kind of a natural instinct within their heads which tell them to look that side, to move this side, and that is why he says triggered to stirrings, and that is why he says triggered to stirrings beyond sense, beyond sense of human beings. It is something that we cannot understand guides this bird. With a start, a bounce, a stab, overtake the instant and drag out some breathing thing. So now the bird, there is a sudden movement, a start, a bounce, a stab. So you can see those three words. Hughes was a master of precision and he doesn't waste an extra word. So see how beautifully he depicts the movement of the bird and the action of the bird falling upon its prey. So with a start, a bounce, a stab with its very sharp beak. In a moment, in an instant, this bird draws out a wreathing thing. Maybe it's a worm that is hidden in the grass or under somewhere crawling on the soil. Without any doubt, with such precision, the bird picks at the bird and draws it out from wherever it was hiding. No indolent procrastinations, no yawning states, no sighs, no head scratchings. So he says that this bird was so fixed on its target. It had no doubt whatsoever about the action it was about to do. So there was no indolent procrastination. You know what procrastination is? Putting things away for a later date. We know that Shakespeare's Hamlet was a prince of procrastination. And here indolent is lazy. So there is no laziness in this bird. The bird doesn't think whether I should take it now or should I keep it for later. Nothing. So no indolent procrastination, no yawning states. It doesn't stand there and yawn. So indolence, yawning, all these are words that express laziness, lethargy. So there is nothing of that sort in this bird. No sighs or head scratchings. Now this is something else. Now all these are things that human beings do. Human beings are the ones who always procrastinate things, who are yawning and lying around and sighing, thinking and rethinking. Head scratching symbolizes doubt. whether or not, I mean, the uncertainty, should I not? But this bird has no such doubts, no sighs, no head scratchings, nothing but bounce and stab and a ravening second. So everything is done in one single split second. So a bounce from where it was standing, the bird just bounces forward, it stabs into the soil or into the grass, and in a moment it takes its prey. And a ravening second. Ravenous, is extremely hungry. So here a ravening second, maybe in a split second the bird swallows the worm. So a ravening second, a hungry second. So it's all done. So the bird has come, it has caught its prey, and the work is done. And then he wonders, what is it that gives this bird such precision? How can it do things with such accuracy, almost like a machine? That's why he said earlier, it is more coiled steel than living. So can a living being be so accurate like a machine? So he feels that this bird is not a live bird, but it is more of a programmed robot or a machine. So that is why he wonders, what is it that prompts this accuracy and this precision? Is it their single mind-sized skulls? So look at that. Two things come into that phrase, single mind-sized skulls. So one thing is that the bird has a small head, because it's a tiny bird, it's got a small head. And look at the way he talks about the size of the skull. Single mind sized skull, because the bird is single minded. It doesn't have a kind of conflicting thoughts like human beings. It is single minded in its purpose. It has just one aim: to hunt, to catch its prey. It is not distracted by anything else. That is why single mind sized skulls. So beautifully he has done that. Or is it a trained body? Is it that the body of the bird by birth, is it born with that kind of a perfection, a trained body which is programmed for this kind of a precise job? Or is it some kind of genius that this bird has? Or is it a nest full of brats, gives their days this bullet and automatic purpose? So he says, is it because this bird is thinking of the children back home, a nest full of birds, the tiny birds that are waiting for her in the nest, a nest full of brats, because little birds are very noisy, so they're all noisy. So maybe is it the thought of the hungry mouths to feed, who are awaiting her arrival with food very eagerly in the nest? Is that what prompts the bird to be so precise? Because the bird knows that it doesn't have time to waste pecking around aimlessly. So is that what prompts her? So all these questions, okay, in that two lines. Is it their single mind-sized skulls, or is it their, I should read it as single mind-sized skulls, or a trained body, or genius, or a nest full of brats gives their days this bullet and automatic purpose? So the precision, that is what he's talking about when he mentions the bullet, because the bullet, once you shoot it, it goes straight to the point. And automatic, because once it is off, it is gone. It is the trajectory is fixed. So now he compares other people who had, or who he feels had this kind of a programmed brain. One, he says, is Mozart. Mozart's brain had it, and the shark's mouth. Now, who is Mozart? Now, Mozart, is the musician, the famous Austrian musician, composer, and he was a child prodigy. He started taking music lessons when he was very young, almost some 3 to 4 years old, and he has made some 600 compositions. And those days, one of his contemporaries predicted that there is going to be no one like him in another 100 years. So he was a maestro, and he was an expert musician, immensely talented. And so he says Mozart's brain must have been like this, because music came to Mozart very naturally. He did not have to take effort for it. He did not have to spend hours contemplating on it. It used to come so naturally to him. That's why he compares it to Mozart's brain. And again, Mozart was not prompted by hunger for fame, or he did not want people to recognize him, or he did not want to earn money out of his talent. Nothing. He composed music because he was programmed to do that. He was born that way. It was something very instinctive. And he talks about another a creature which has this kind of precision, and that is the shark. And the shark's mouth that hungers down the blood smell even to a leak of its own side and devouring of itself. So he says the shark can smell blood, and even a blood that is quite far away, it can smell or sense the presence of blood in the water. And even sometimes when the shark is wounded and its own blood prompts it to go hunting, and sometimes it even devours itself, because the shark too has a single-minded purpose of seeking this. It's a hunter's instinct prompts it to seek the source of this blood. And so the shark's mouth that hungers down the blood smell even to a leak of its own side and devouring of itself. Efficiency which strikes too streamlined for any doubt to pluck it, or obstruction deflect. So he says that all these creatures, that is the thrush, and again the shark, and Mozart. Mozart, of course, is a human being, but he admires, Ted Hughes admired Mozart for his perfection and instinctive excellence in producing music. And so he says all these people, all these people and these creatures, they possess an efficiency. They possess such an efficiency which is streamlined, or it is designed. To streamline is to design something as to increase its efficiency. So they possess an efficiency which is streamlined, and it allows no space for doubt, and no obstruction would deflect it. Obstruction, nothing, no obstacle, nothing can deflect the purpose, the single-mindedness of these men, this person and these creatures mentioned. Deflect is to cause something to veer away from its course. So nothing can distract this bird, nothing can stop Mozart from producing beautiful music, nothing can stop a shark from pursuing the smell of the blood. So he talks about the single-mindedness of these creatures. And now in the last stanza, he makes a comparison with human beings. He compares human beings to these creatures. With a man, it is otherwise. Heroisms on horseback, outstripping his desk diary at a broad desk, carving at a tiny ivory ornament for years. His act worships itself. While for him, though he bends to be blent in the prayer, how loud and above what furious spaces of fire do the distracting devils orgy and hosanna, under what wilderness of black, silent, deep waters weep. So he says, but this is not at all the case with human beings. Because for human beings, their actions are not prompted by instinct. They do things to prove themselves to others. Heroisms on horseback, outstripping his desk diary at a broad desk, carving at a tiny ivory ornament. So man does things. He doesn't do anything quickly. He takes time to do, just like an artisan who carves at a tiny ivory ornament for years. Same way, man spends all his life trying to prove himself to the world. He suppresses his natural instincts, unlike the bird or unlike the shark, and even unlike Mozart, who was not prompted by any worldly motives, but who acted very instinctively. Unlike all these, ordinary men like us, we deliberate on our actions. We do things not because nature tells us to do it, but because we decide that this will bring us some kind of a benefit, that we want to impress somebody with our actions. So that is why we do things. Our actions are always stilted, they are kind of superficial. We are a pretentious lot, unlike animals who are very, very natural. And he talks about this, or like when man he's bent to worship, he tries to, even when man is immersed in prayer, even when man tries to pray, outwardly he might look like a person who's praying. Outwardly you might feel that he is deeply into his prayer, that he's concentrating on his devotion to God, because his eyes are closed, his hands are clasped together. But there is no saying what is going on inside a man's mind. So here, black silent waters weep can be a reference to the turmoil that is going on inside man's mind. So outwardly it's like the still waters, deep waters, which are outwardly very very calm, serene, but under that you might have very strong currents of water moving. And so same way here, though the man looks as if he is praying, though he is trying to pray, but his mind, the inner mind, is seething and it is turbulent. But his calm exterior, it kind of camouflages what is going on inside. And so here again, the furious spaces, there is this mention of furious spaces of fire. So furious spaces, again, it is the void in man's mind, because again here we can think of the word single-minded. The bird is single-minded, but man, he's engaged in so many things, and there are gaps in his mind that can always be filled, and these gaps always distract man. So that is why he talks about furious spaces of fire. And in these furious spaces, distracting evils like orgies and hosannas. Orgy again is a mention of sexual extravagance, a sexual attraction, of that people sometimes experience sexual desires which distract man from his purpose. So that is orgy. And hosanna is again an expression of pleasure, of happiness. So all worldly pleasures that tear man away from his single-minded devotion to God. So all that that we can interpret the poem in all these ways. And so the furious spaces, as I told you, it refers to the temptations of man. And now here in this poem, he mainly seeks to contrast the thrush and human beings. So let's see how he draws this contrast. So the thrush is concentration itself. It is single-mindedness. It is dedication. It thinks of nothing else other than the worm that it has to catch. Whereas man is just the opposite. If the thrush is concentration, man is distraction. If the bird is single-minded, man is purposeless. He doesn't know what he is looking for. If the bird is dedicated, man is shifting. He is vagrant. His mind doesn't stick onto one thing. It keeps shifting. His interests keep changing. He has doubts. Even if you talk about faith in God, he has doubts whether to believe in God or not. So that is one contrast. And then again, we can see that the thrush is instinctive. It is natural. It acts according to, you remember what he said in the beginning of the poem, triggered to stirrings beyond sense. We human beings can never understand what guides the bird. It is instinct. It is the instinct that guides the bird, and it is natural. It acts naturally, whereas man is not that way. Man is pretentious. As opposed to instinctive, obeying the instincts, he is always superficial. He is artificial in his acts. He is not natural like the bird, but he is artificial. That's why I told you that his actions and his thoughts are all stilted. And the thrush obeys nature. It has no doubt, no procrastination, no head scratchings. It just obeys what nature tells it to do. Whereas man defies nature. This is one thing that you find in all the poems of Ted Hughes. That he always feels that man's life would have been much more simpler had he chosen to remain a creature like all the other creatures. It is this sophistication and this so-called culture that has taken man from the pleasures of being a natural being. So here, while the thrush obeys nature, man defies nature. The thrush simply does what is expected of it, whereas man does things that are so artificial. He does things against his nature. He pretends, he tries to please people, he tries to act like a hero, he tries to behave in a manner that is not his true self. So in every way, man is an absolute contrast to the thrushes. So I guess that is what he's trying to convey in the poem, about how it would be so desirable if man could be as natural as the thrush. And here again you see all kind of images of violence, and you have this bullet and automatic purpose and coiled steel. So he might be referring to all the man-made weapons too, the gun and the bullet and the destruction that man causes to his fellow beings. So I guess we can read that meaning too into the poem. So I guess that is all that I have to say about the poem Thrushes, and I hope this has given you some sort of insight into the poem.